What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
It is windy outside today.
I wasn't expecting that. It was the first thing when we woke up this morning. Ashley goes to me, we're going to have very strong winds the next 2 days.
That was like the very first thing. It's because I absolutely can't stand our winds.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting to think about how first responders, when it comes to them identifying themselves with their job and the things that they do, they're very prideful in the sense of, telling people that they're a police officer for the most part. Safety is always a concern, but they're also great about the whole posting things on social media and the thin blue line swag and all of those things. But what I think that a lot of first responders fail to do is to understand that their tactical decision making can be applied to their personal life too.
I haven't really ever considered that in thinking about the tactical decision making when it comes to your personal life, and it's really something that right when you talk about people posting online all the first responder stuff and sharing that, it's I have faces coming to mind of people who do that, and being able to kind of have a balance with it is so important.
So let's break it down and let's talk about how tactical thinking, when you apply it off duty, can help to be able to reduce things like conflict, building stronger relationships, and even having things be a little bit more peaceful at home. The first thing I'm thinking about is threat assessment and emotional awareness. So you can basically use your ability to read a situation to be able to recognize the tension that your partner or your child might be having. And when you do this and you're mindful of it, it might help to be able to de-escalate things early.
Being able to, just because we're off duty doesn't mean that the skills that we've developed with being in law enforcement, it can't be effective. It's something, it's recognition of a threat or a non-threat or of a intense situation, being able to de-escalate it. You're so skilled in dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. Why not use that to your advantage?
Yeah, I'm also thinking about tactical breathing and emotional regulation. So just like in critical incidents, calming your body before you even respond to something, let's say it's involving you in an argument with your spouse or even with a child. If you regulate things first before you even start, then this could be incredibly beneficial at home.
Having that tunnel vision when you're going to a major incident it's a huge problem, and this, and being able to analyze it to where you start having an intense conversation with your wife or your kids or whoever, being able to see things from the 1,000-foot view instead of just being so focused in on the anger or the frustration that you have right in that moment.
Yeah, when you have clear communication under stress, this helps, of course, with better conflict resolution. But I'm thinking about how an officer might call for backup at work when things require clarity. But the same might be applied to a really tough conversation at home when you might need to have your spouse or your teenager called in.
Yeah, being able to have an outside view sometimes helps that situation to de-escalate it, whatever it may be.
You also have a lot of scene safety, so protecting your peace at home is just as important. You can do things like checking every door and then scanning every room when you're at work. And at home, it can mean that you're guarding your time, you're setting boundaries, you're doing things to be able to make your home a little bit more of a safe space, not only physically, but also emotionally.
Being able to set those boundaries and have this, taking your profession into the home life aspect is, you're not saying, oh, well, I'm a cop at home too. No, it's using the tools that you have and being able to say, okay, well, this is secure, this is not, and this is how I'm going to address these issues.
Something that you put a lot of effort in at home is, at work you debrief after calls and you debrief after conflict. So just like you would review your calls to be able to learn and then kind of talk through disagreements, maybe at work, you can do the same thing at home to be able to kind of deepen that trust and then prevent any kind of future misunderstandings.
Yeah, you want to have clarity on those situations, and you don't want to always, just if you just hold on to not. So if you have like a major incident at work and you don't debrief it, and there's flaws that you didn't like how your partners responded to something, you didn't like how this incident unfolded, being able to do that same thing in the home mindset is having, you have an intense conversation with your spouse or your kids, and being able to say, okay, I didn't like how this happened, but let's figure out how we can adapt and change it for the future so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, if we're mindful, there are so many tactical tools that we can bring into the home to be able to strengthen our relationships. The first thing I think is to pause before you react. So you might take a tactical pause at work in order to be able to, I don't know, maybe save lives. But at home, it can actually help to be able to save your marriage if you just take a breath before you respond with high emotions.
Yeah, because if you just do a knee-jerk reaction and try responding in that split second, you can make mistakes. And being able to take that second to take a breath and just say, okay, what am I feeling right now? How do I need to respond?
Yeah, I think one, I don't want to say conflict, but definitely something that I've identified, and you have too, within our marriage is using brief and direct language and then saying what you mean very clearly and very calmly, avoiding using sarcasm, passive aggression, especially when things are kind of stressful. A lot of the times I'll kind of skip and completely bypass the whole like attorney interrogation, and I'll go straight to being a judge, and I'm very like simple, like, what did that mean?
Yeah.
Say more, right? Like I'm very much more of like a judge-like than I am when we are having a disagreement. And that's something that you can struggle with. So you have had to work on that, and I have had to work on my patience with that.
Yeah, and it's being able to have that understanding. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Being able to adapt it and make it work for you as a couple or as a parent.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll say something and I'll say, what do you mean? And then you'll kind of say the same thing again. And then I'll repeat what you just said. And then you'll say, I didn't say that.
Sometimes words come out and you didn't, that's not how you meant it or how you are trying to explain it. And it's funny because I know exactly what she's talking about.
Well, yeah, because that's like the repeat, right? That happens over and over again. And then you'll say, well, okay, well, that's not what I meant. And then I'll say, okay, well, how am I supposed to know what you mean if you didn't mean what you said?
And that's where that's why it's important to sometimes pause, take a breath, and sometimes in your head you're saying one thing but your mouth's saying another, and you're like, wait, hold on, that doesn't correlate to what we're even talking about.
Yeah, luckily you and I, like, we're so calm and like we don't have arguments. Like this would be more of like a disagreement between you and I. Mm-hmm. But usually in that circumstance, I'll just say like, okay, I'm done, and I'll just like, okay, bye.
And then I find 10 other sentences of how I can compile it to what I mean until finally one makes sense.
I think something important is to practice situational awareness at home too. When you notice that a loved one is off, maybe you can ask questions like, you seem quiet today, or, is everything going okay? What's going on?
Having those conversations, because sometimes there absolutely could be something going on, and sometimes you could just be so enthralled in thoughts of what you have to do or whatever it may be. You don't have to take on the brunt yourself. You're in a relationship. You have loved ones that can help support you. Something
else is to train together. So I think that couples and families need to find this to be more and more important when it comes to, I don't know, self-defense classes or even one time, Clint, you set up all of these different targets around our house, and I had an empty firearm that I had to go and like clear the house, but you were behind me and you were showing me all of the ways that you would tactfully clear a house. And so doing things like that are these sort of role plays, I think that it really helps to be able to not only strengthen your security at home, but also that bond that you have with your security together.
Yeah, having instances like that, because you're expressing and sharing your knowledge, but not only that, you're spending that quality time together and being able to say, hey, this is why I think this way, and let me show you why.
So something else that's very interesting is not saving leadership for the workplace. So I think that, Clint, you kind of did this backwards. I feel like well, I know how much I push you. You know, we just had a similar conversation with my dad this morning. And I think that it's very important to have a supportive system at home that will push you to be able to do more on the workplace. But then too, that kind of transverses into leadership in the home too.
Yeah, you need to have someone to support you and build you up and push you, and I thank you for that, and I do regularly. But you need to be able to have that balance at work and at home, to where you should be able to have a leadership role no matter where you are.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.